Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to prepare these delicious Mexican sweet conchas. So if you would like to see how to prepare this recipe, continue watching this video and let's get started. We're going to start out by dissolving 2.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast in half a cup of warm milk, along with 2 tablespoons of flour and 1 tablespoon of sugar. Mix until everything is completely dissolved and free of lumps. Cover and set in a warm, dry place for about 10 to 15 minutes or until it doubles in size. While we wait for the yeast to activate, we're going to begin to mix our dry ingredients. Add 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour to a large bowl, half a cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of ground anise. You can also replace the ground anise with the liquid form, half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Mix until all your dry ingredients are well combined. If you're using a regular bowl, use a whisk to mix your dry ingredients. Before we begin to add the rest of the ingredients, we're going to replace the paddle with the dough hook. Our yeast is fully activated and it's doubled in size. Add it to the bowl with the rest of the ingredients, along with half a cup of unsalted melted butter. Begin by mixing on medium speed. As it's mixing, we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. We're going to start out by adding 3 eggs, one at a time. In order to avoid from getting eggshells into the mixture, I like to break them into a separate bowl before adding them into the dough. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla and continue mixing on medium speed until your dough comes together. If you're using a stand-up mixer, it should take anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes. If you're mixing by hand, it might take you a little bit longer. Once your dough no longer sticks to the side of the bowl, that's a great indication to let you know that your dough is ready. It should have a nice stretchy feel to it. In a separate bowl, add a small amount of vegetable oil. Using your hands, spread it all around the bowl. The vegetable oil is going to keep the dough from sticking to the side of the bowl as it expands. Remove the dough from the mixing bowl and shape it into a nice smooth ball of dough. Add a little bit more vegetable oil to your hand and rub the top of the dough to keep it from drying up. Cover it with a clean towel or plastic wrap and place it in a warm, dry place for about an hour or until it doubles in size. While we're waiting for the dough, we're going to begin to prepare the toppings for the conchas. Using a bowl or on a clean surface, add 1 cup of confectioner sugar, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 3/4 of a cup of vegetable shortening. I'm using Crisco, but you can use whichever brand you prefer. Mix those 3 ingredients until it has a nice crumbly texture. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla and continue mixing until it all comes together. Mix for a good 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, if it's still too dry, you can add about a tablespoon of water to it. Just make sure not to add too much at a time because you don't want it to be too sticky, but you also don't want it to be too dry. With the amount of ingredients we used, eventually it did come together and it should look similar to this. Once it's nice and smooth and it's no longer sticking to the surface, we're going to separate it into 4 equal pieces. We're going to start out with the chocolate topping first, and for that we're going to add 1 tablespoon of cocoa to the first piece. Mix it in until it's well combined. If it's sticking to your hand or the surface, add a little bit of flour. You don't want it to be too sticky. When you're done with it, it should feel more like Play-Doh. It should be nice and soft and manageable. For the remainder of the toppings, you can choose whichever color you prefer by adding the food coloring of your choice. For the pink one, we're going to add a couple drops of the red food coloring, and we're also going to make a yellow and a green topping. Transfer them to a dish or container, cover them, and place them in the refrigerator until they're ready to be used. Prepare your cookie sheets by rubbing a small amount of vegetable shortening to the bottom of the pan, then lining it with parchment paper. Lightly flour your working surface. Our dough has been resting for a little bit over an hour. Now that it's doubled in size, we're going to transfer it to our floured working surface. Lightly knead it to remove some of the air and shape it into a rectangular oval shape like this, or something similar to where you can cut it into equal pieces. Using a scraper or a knife, cut it in half and then into smaller pieces. The size you cut them depends on how big you want your conchas. We're going to shape 2-inch balls of dough, and that should give us a good medium-sized concha. Some of the pieces may be a little bit bigger than the other ones, so we're going to take some from the bigger pieces and give it to the smaller pieces. If you want your dough to be more accurately sized, you can use a kitchen scale to weigh each piece. Begin by shaping each piece into a nice smooth ball of dough. To shape my dough, I start out by lightly kneading it by hand, then rolling it in my hand or on the working surface, or a combination of all three. You want your dough to be equally sized so that it can bake evenly. Transfer them to the prepared cookie sheet, placing them about 2 inches apart so they can have enough room to expand. Cover them and place them in a warm, dry place while we prepare the toppings for the first set. Lightly flour your working surface and choose the color of topping that you want to start with. We're going to go with the chocolate topping first. Equally cut it into 1/2-inch pieces. To shape the topping, you can do it one of 4 ways. You can shape it by hand like this, or you can place it between 2 pieces of plastic and using a rolling pin, roll it out until it's the size that you need. The third way is by placing it between 2 pieces of plastic and stretching it out with your hand. The fourth way is by using a tortilla press. Just make sure not to press on it too hard because you don't want it to be too thin. You want to have a light thickness to it. Remove it from the plastic and place it on top of the first piece of dough. Arrange it until the chocolate topping is completely covering the top of the dough. Repeat the process with the rest of the pieces. Once they're all covered, we're going to cut out our shape. Using a small knife, a paring knife, or a butter knife, gently press down on the sugar topping to create the design that you prefer. I'm going to keep it traditional and I'm going to cut out the shape of a concha. Concha is translated to seashell, which is how these Mexican sweetbreads get their name. Once your first set is done, we're going to cover it and place it in a warm, dry place and let them rest for about 30 to 45 minutes. We're going to repeat the process with the rest of the colors until we're all done. To create the topping with 2 different colors, simply take a piece of each of the food colors that you want to combine, roll each one into a nice smooth ball, combine them together and roll them into a nice smooth ball. Place them between the plastic and roll it out until you have the desired size that you need. The chocolate ones have been resting for a little bit over 30 minutes. Bake them at 350 degrees for 12 to 15 minutes. Make sure they completely cool down before you remove them from the baking sheet. And now the taste test. Your conchas should have a light golden brown color on the bottom, just like this one. Now we're going to open it up to see what it looks like on the inside. These go great with coffee, hot chocolate, champurrado, or a glass of milk. Look how nice and spongy these came out. And the aroma is unbelievable. And not to mention, your house is going to smell amazing while they're baking. I hope you give this recipe a try. And if you do, let me know how you like it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in our next video.